everybody. Welcome to the inaugural episode of the RIFF podcast. Just to introduce myself, my name is Travis. I have been obsessed with rock and metal music for, I don't know, like half my life, maybe at this point. Well, I won't get ahead of myself here. So, the reason why there's such a time gap in between the little preview episode that's up on streaming services is that I kind of went through halfway through the production of this whole thing, I had a change of an idea of what I wanted to actually accomplish with this show, because when I started this, I initially thought, I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll just cover funny or interesting news stories in the rock and metal world over the past week or so, and talk about new singles that have come out, new album releases. I would have had a segment where I recommended 5 random songs for everybody to listen to, and then after I made the first episode and I fully edited it together, and I listened to it back, and I was just like, I'm not really feeling this. I feel like I'm trying to think of, in the long run of doing this, I could see it being such a hassle to do, and I don't want to do that because this is something I do for fun, and I don't want it to end up turning into something that feels like a chore. So I figure, what if I just do random episodes? Well, not necessarily random. I have themes for all of them, but if I just talk about more personal stuff regarding music and how I feel about certain things, I have a plan to do my biggest hot takes within metal, which there's going to be one main episode where I go over kind of my more smaller pet peeves, and then there's going to be in a couple of episodes probably end up being hitting the big topics, I don't know, just to throw a couple out there, separating the art from the artist, or whether politics belong in music or whatever. I definitely plan on hitting all those things because they're very interesting to me, and I feel like I have a lot to say about those. But we're not talking about that right now. I thought for this first episode, since this might be a lot of people's first time hearing my voice and hearing of me as a person and as a human being, I thought, why don't I get everybody up to speed and tell the story of how I became obsessed with this music and how it's became such a big part of my life. And it's kind of funny because thinking about it, I don't think I really had a moment where I was I've heard a lot of people's stories of when they became a fan of metal or whatever, and it's they were just a regular kid and they went through life, but then some kid they knew in school, or their a sibling or something like that gave them a Metallica CD or something, when that was here, listen to this, it'll blow your mind, and it did, and people went nuts. It's not really like that for me. I didn't quite have that growing up, and I think the reason for that was because my parents are into heavier music. My dad's a huge metalhead. He grew up with listening to bands like Kiss. He grew up in the glam and thrash days, so he got into Metallica and Motley Crue and Megadeth and Pantera when those bands were just starting. And so whenever there was that kind of interest in me listening to more rock music, they kind of just threw me headfirst into that and were okay, this is what you got to listen to. And I think that's really cool thinking about it early on. I think one of my earliest experiences that I can remember with music is my mom's a huge fan of Godsmack, so if she's listening to this, love you. Thanks for introducing me to one of my favorite bands. She used to play their song Voodoo in the car all the time because she loved that song, and I grew to love it too. I knew all the lyrics, and even though I was just a kid, and realistically probably shouldn't have been listening to Godsmack at that age, but who will? I don't really feel putting an age restriction on things is really necessary, depending on certain circumstances, but, whatever. And then another huge thing of evolving my relationship with music is I remember me and my parents used to play the Lego Rock Band game. So there was Guitar Hero and there was Rock Band. Well, there was a Lego version of Rock Band, and I don't remember all of the songs that were in the game because I was just a little kid. I'm pretty sure I sang, and I think I forget who played guitar or the drums. I think we had the Rock Band drums at some point. Um, but I don't remember for certain because it was such a long time ago. But one of the songs that I remember being in that selection of songs and the songs that were in the game, it was a little band called Alice in Chains. They had the song "Check My Brain" from the album Black Gives Way to Blue. Obviously, it was the record that William Duvall sang on, or well, he's currently still in the band today, but you get what I mean. So I loved that song back in the day. I still love it. It's still one of my favorite Alice in Chains songs to this day. Listening to it as a 21-year-old like myself, I still think that song is awesome. And that was one of those things that it's like it kind of planted the seeds early on, and then some years go by and not really listen. I kind of listened to just like random pop stuff and like I don't know, random like YouTube songs and stuff like that. Because this is around the time when I was like starting to get on the internet more and consuming internet content, as some people might consider it. And I remember I was driving. Well, I wasn't driving at this point, but me and my mom were going somewhere, and I heard this song on the radio, and I was like, "Whoa, this is a cool song. What?" Or like, "Who? What is this band?" or whatever. I can't remember exactly how I framed it. My mom was like, "Oh, this is Seether." And so I looked it up. The song was "Nobody Praying for Me" by Seether, if anybody wants to go back and listen to that song. And I remember being blown away by that song because this is the first time that I had ever heard cursing in a song. Like, whenever there's the line, it's like, "I've not given up because nobody gives a fuck." Like, that blew my, like, 12-year-old mind because I'd never heard somebody swearing in a song before. And yeah, that's kind of where the planted the seed because I liked that song, and then kind of just went further from there. And like I can't remember how exactly, but one of my first like metal bands that I listened to, I say in quotes because some people say they're hard rock or whatever, but one of my gateway bands was Five Finger Death Punch, a band that I still love to this day, even though they're kind of they're like kind of like the Nickelback of like modern hard rock with how much they get dogged on, but I don't really care about all that shit. I still love their music. Um, I think it was my dad that introduced me, or at least he played some of the music for me, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is really good." And at that time, I also got into like I started listening to Seether more. I listened to other songs. I got into like 3 Days Grace. I got into Disturbed, which was huge for me. I love Disturbed. Still do love Disturbed. They're amazing. And then, of course, since my dad grew up in the 70s and 80s, he introduced me to all of the classic bands in that genre, like introduced me to like Metallica, Megadeth, Testament, Pantera, that kind of stuff. I didn't get into Slayer until later, though. And yeah, it kind of just went from there. I remember specifically playing Xbox. I used to listen to music while playing video games before the Xbox had that feature where you could listen to like Spotify or Pandora or whatever in the background. So the old Xbox One used to have this feature where you could have a game and you could have another app taking up like a third of the screen. It was like called like a snap feature or something like that. I can't remember exactly how it was, but it was like the game is in like the small, like the 2/3 of the screen, and then whatever app you were using was in the third right half right third of the screen. I'm completely stumbling over my words, but hey, this is a podcast. I'm not used to talking by myself this long for most videos where I'm just kind of rambling. But yeah, I'm trying to I would play. So this was around the time I was getting into Doom because the 2016 game came out, and I absolutely loved that game. And I loved the multiplayer in that because it was so much fun. It was just like arena shooter kind of stuff. I got really good at it. I used both shotguns in the same loadout because I was a nerd like that. And that's how I would listen to music. Or I was playing Doom, or like I would play Destiny or something like that because I got into Destiny around the same time playing that game. And I would just have music in the corner there, and like taking up the right third of the screen and have my game in like the little corner so I could quickly glance. And I got into so many bands that way. I got introduced to like Killswitch Engage. I actually found Avenged Sevenfold through a Game of War magazine because it was promoting the Hail to the King Deathbat mobile game that they had that I don't think you can actually download or play anymore, which kind of sucks. But I actually never played that game, so I don't know how it was for mobile. But I'm just not into mobile games at all anymore, so it's whatever. But yeah, I discovered like Killswitch Engage, Bullet for My Valentine. I got into more songs by bands that I already liked at the time, like Five Finger Death Punch, Disturbed, Pantera, 3 Days Grace, Seether, Shinedown, pretty much anything in that like post grunge and new metal kind of thing. And this like I also had gotten into like Slipknot especially, but I like also got into like Korn and like other new metal bands at that time. So I think Pandora was how I discovered Mudvayne actually. Now that I think of it, I think that was how I remember hearing Mudvayne for the first time. But of course, my memory is kind of fuzzy of a lot of this stuff, so I just don't remember. But I'm like 95% sure. And like, I would hear like Rob Zombie, I would hear Marilyn Manson, I heard little snippets of Tool here and there, but I didn't really get to appreciate Tool until much later because I think prog metal was a little. I think the big thing was just the song lengths, but which is funny because now I think of like a 10-minute Dream Theater song and I'm like, oh, that's nothing. It's funny how tastes change like that. So yeah, that was kind of how I started fully listening to heavy metal. And of course, I discovered like White Zombie through Rob Zombie, of course. And so yeah, that was kind of what I started listening to first was like 80s heavy metal, as well as like modern like post grunge music and like new metal. That was mostly the stuff I was listening to. So I was listening to a lot of Korn, a lot of Slipknot, a lot of Disturbed, a lot of Mudvayne, a lot of Rob Zombie, a good chunk of Metallica, Testament, Megadeth, Pantera, 3 Days Grace, either Five Finger. At some point later on, my dad showed me bands like Volbeat and Alter Bridge, and these are all bands I'm still big fans of to this day. Because their music has been pretty important to my love of music, and yeah, it was basically just like, and then, I started to get onto Spotify and then we got premium and that opened a lot of doors for me. Oh, I forgot to mention during the whole post-grunge thing, Theory of a Dead Man was a band that I got into pretty heavily during those days. They're not a band I really listen to anymore just because I thought the last handful of records they put out I've just not been a fan of at all. But I used to like them a lot back in the day. I still like some songs. I just don't really listen to them much. But I discovered other bands. I think I discovered Stained through there, as well as listen to more Godsmack. And yeah, that was really what kind of fostered my love for metal, was listening to Pandora while playing Destiny 1 or Doom 2016 multiplayer and just having a blast. Getting introduced to all this really cool music that was new to me at the time. And of course, appreciating all the classic bands too, like Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Metallica. That was kind of when I got into like started using Spotify more often, and then I remember I would also sit in the computer section of my local library, and I would also discover a lot of music through that because of YouTube's algorithm, and that was how I discovered Trivium, my all-time favorite band, and kind of just went all. I shouldn't say downhill from there, but I think also, I'm pretty sure I also discovered Stone Sour through Pandora. Or I might have been maybe my dad introducing me to Stone Sour at the same time as Slipknot. I can't remember exactly. But after that I started to discover more bands for myself, and then I started listening to for a big thing was listening to like more like satanic music, because like we all know that metal's not really like a super evil subgenre of music at all. But my parents originally didn't really want me to be like listening to bands like Slayer and like Ghost and stuff like that as like a 13, 14-year-old kid, highly impressionable, which is probably a good thing. It kind of sucked at the time because I was like, man, I really want to listen to this music, but I mean, now it doesn't fucking matter. But that went away pretty soon after. But yeah, and then I actually discovered Behemoth through seeing them live. My second concert ever was Slayer's Farewell Tour in 2018, and Behemoth was on that lineup along with Testament, Anthrax, Lamb of God, and of course Slayer. And yeah, it was kind of how I got into appreciating all those bands more. Bands like Devil Driver, I'm pretty sure. My dad might have actually introduced me to Devil Driver, if I remember correctly. I'm not too sure, though. But yeah, that's pretty much how it went. And then I just started discovering more and more bands, more extreme bands. I got into like more of the classic death metal stuff. I had heard Cannibal Corpse early on. I didn't really like them. Now I think they're great, obviously. But no, I discovered Death. That was like the first band I listened to that was like real death metal. And I really enjoyed them. And then kind of went down the rabbit hole a little bit, started listening to more like Morbid Angel, a little bit more Cannibal Corpse. And I think around that time I was getting into more progressive metal too. I started listening to more Mastodon. I actually discovered Gojira and Mastodon on Pandora. Actually, I think they were in like the heavy metal station because that's what I listened to. And yeah, I heard Stranded by Gojira that way. And I can't remember what the first Mastodon song I ever heard was. I want to say it might have been Show Yourself from Emperor Sand, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I actually don't remember. Could have also been Blood and Thunder, because that would have made the most sense probably. But yeah, and I'll kind of speed you through basically just going through listening to Spotify, following record labels on YouTube and on other social media platforms, and discovering new bands that way. That's kind of how I get into stuff, or like friends telling me about stuff. Like I remember my buddy James, who I might get on here to talk about like a guitar-based episode because I play guitar, and that's definitely something I want to get into. He introduced me to Sleep Token way back in COVID lockdown, so yeah, I was pretty early to that band for the most part. Now it's kind of strange because they're like the face of modern metal now, and yeah, it's just now a combination of seeing bands live. Sometimes I've seen bands live that I've never heard of before that I'm a big fan of now. Songs recommended to me by friends or family, or listening to random stuff on YouTube, or following record labels on Instagram or whatever, and being like, oh, that song sounds kind of cool. I'm gonna check that out. My mom texted me something that was something I wanted to get into there, but I realize I'm kind of just yapping just to yap. I do want to keep these episodes kind of short for the most part. I mean, some of these might get a little longer just because of what I might be talking about, or if I have a guest on, those will obviously be much longer. But I think for right now, I'm going to call it. I'm going to try to hit it around the 20-minute mark. So, in case if you enjoyed this podcast, which I sincerely hope you did if you listened to it this far, be sure to hit the follow button on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel that I'm posting this on, because there will be much more. I'm going to try to get this on other platforms too, but we'll see. I had a pain trying to get my other dark humor, goofy, fun time podcast called From the Abyss. I tried to get that on Apple, and they were just being an absolute pain in the ass. So I remember saying fuck it and not bothering with that. But with this one, I might try to get both of those on here now that I'm a host of two podcasts. You can follow me on Instagram at TravNort or at GotRiff Media. I have two Instagram accounts. You can search up Trav Nort on Music Board. That's where I'm going to post more album reviews, mostly like new releases and stuff like that, so I don't feel I need to talk about them here. But that's going to be where those live. I do have a Twitter account, but I don't post on it, so there's no real point in promoting that. Follow me on Threads at Trav Nort. I post random thoughts there. And yeah, with that said, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I had a lot of fun recording this. Um, New episodes will come out whenever they come out. At this point, I don't have like a set schedule yet, but I'm going to try to do every week or two, like at least once a week maybe, but we'll see, depending on how hectic life gets and what I feel like talking about, or if I feel like there's something important enough to talk about, I will. So I'll let y'all go. Thanks for listening. I appreciate y'all. See ya!